back. Yes, it is the Friday news lunch from the Bucks County Beacon. This is Kevin Mahoney. This week, I'm joined once again by Emily Smith, the owner and publisher of the Beacon. Woo! Not only will we be serving up this week's top stories affecting our community and the nation, but we'll also take a peek behind the scenes. What's happening at the Beacon? Lots and lots, as it turns out. We hope you join us live every Friday at noon, YouTube. And we're going to be doing the TikTok. We're going to be doing the TikTok, right? Yeah, we had our little test last time we were on. What's that?
We're live on TikTok.
Oh, we're live on TikTok. We are on TikTok. If you're joining us on TikTok, yeah. Once again, I'm going to say to everybody, if you're watching this on TikTok, send us a little message, let us know. We'll be able to hopefully see some of the comments. But we want to make sure that it's working right. That's fantastic. Oh, that's great to know. Woo! You can join our live chat during the show, and you can bring some friends along too. What was that?
I said, we're trying.
We're trying. I got back on the tracks, man, after being way off in the field for a couple of weeks. Tell you. Well, listen, everybody, if it's not already blatantly apparent, we're going to need independent, community-supported, progressive media in the weeks, months, and years ahead. There could not be a better time to take a moment to head on over to buckscountybeacon.com and click on the Support the Beacon button and become a supporter. You could become a monthly entry-level supporter for as little as, wait for it, $1 a month. $1 a month. Or jump right in as a regular supporter for $5 a month, or become a yearly supporter for as little as $50 a year. You can also drop a one-time donation to help keep the Beacon's critical lens focused and sustainable. Just go to the buckscountybeacon.com, click on the Support the Beacon button, and become a supporter today. Well, let's see what kind of nonsense we got going on this week. Yes, well, this is a big, beautiful bill. Yep, even the name of the budget has to troll Biden. That's what we get. This is the era that we are in. This is unbelievable. That did pass the House, and now we're going to see what happens in the Senate and see how much of our country was just going to be gutted. We shall see. And the Trump administration said yesterday, that it was banning Harvard from enrolling international students after Harvard officials refused the administration's demand to hand over detailed personnel files of all its international students. There's this little thing, you know how you have HIPAA in medicine? There's a thing in education, it's called FERPA. Same kind of deal. You don't just divulge willy-nilly kind of personnel files of people at the university. Why? Federal law. But no. So the administration said, nope, no international students for you. And just this morning, Harvard announced that it was suing the Trump administration for what it called its unlawful and unwarranted action. So here we go, up in the stakes once again. And on Wednesday, in a horrific news, a young couple who worked at the Israeli embassy in D.C. were shot dead outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in the district. Yaron Lischinsky, 30, and Sarah Lynn Milgrim, 26, were to be engaged next week. The killer shouted, "Free, free Palestine," as he was being arrested, which will no doubt deepen tensions in the United States. Because, of course, this is going to be read as not the single lone killer, but as a function of the Free Palestine movement. This is horrific in so many ways. Forecasters at the National Hurricane Center warned of an above-average number of hurricanes this season. They expect 13 to 19 storms to form in the Atlantic between June 1st and November 30th. 5 of the last 6 years had above-average number of storms, thanks in large part to climate change. That's right. And what's up with the polar vortex, by the way? And the rain and the cold? Some of my plants are liking it, I gotta say. Some of it. And are you ready for... What's that?
The weeds are liking it.
The weeds are loving it. The weeds, they're part of my plants. They embrace them all. I don't discriminate. You have weeds. Come on. And are you ready for the No Kings protests gearing up for June 14th? That's right around the corner. We hope that you're kind of connecting up with a local community group to help plan that next event. No Kings protest, and just happens to be Donald Trump's birthday. Yes, indeed. And he's going to have his little military parade in D.C. or whatever. What's happening in the Beacon? Well, Brian Fitzpatrick provided the vote necessary to cut Medicaid and SNAP benefits by about $1 trillion. As Cyril Michaleko reports in The Beacon, the cuts are part of the Republican budget bill that is slashing public benefits to give tax breaks to the richest among us. And after Bucks County Sheriff Fred Herron eagerly sought to join ICE's task force model, which essentially lets them all become mini ICE agents, Bucks County commissioners voted for a resolution to remind Herron's office that, hey, you can't do that. Nope, can't do it. You have no legal authority. As Melinda Rizzo reports, the legal responsibility for entering such agreements, quote, belongs to Bucks County commissioners and is codified in the Pennsylvania Constitution. The ACLU lawsuit is being filed. And Pat LaMarche reports on the increasing crisis of homelessness in Bucks County and across the nation. That's especially true now that the emergency housing vouchers from the U.S. Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, is running out of money. And the Republicans in Congress seem more interested in cutting programs that help people than bolstering them. And that money, that bill, those emergency housing vouchers were supposed to last 10 years. But because of the increase in housing, they'll run out of funds in 5 years. And so, of course, this Congress is just going to let it go. Well, and Emily just got back from the Lenfest News Philanthropy Summit. That's a mouthful. The Lenfest News Philanthropy Summit. Yep. And we're going to get all the deets on that. More great news. I am sure we're going to get into it. So, Emily, it's great to see you again. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, other than the exhaustion that has kind of set in, I had my final grades were due on Tuesday, which also happened to be primary day. And because I'm judge of elections, which meant I wouldn't be able to be there to hand a grade. So I had to be at the judge of elections. So all the things got kind of crunched at the end of the semester with, of course, the last minute things like, hey, will you accept a late work the day before grades are due? Stuff like that.
Yeah. I was volunteering at the polls from 10 to 12 on Tuesday, and I got on a train at 1 o'clock to go to Philly for this conference.
Oh
it was tight. It was tight for sure.
Yeah, it was crazy. And we had, it was, there's just a great group of people. I've talked about this on the show before. Great group of people I work with at the polls. I mean, it's just been, it's awesome. I think that we all on the working side of things just really kind of enjoy it. It was kind of it was a pretty slow day. Unfortunately, we had turnout rates in Bucks County right just over 25%. I think our polling place was a bit lower. And to cap things off, there were a ton of write-ins. So, what people don't know, right, who, if you just go out and vote on that day, is that the write-ins are what take a long time, right, at the end of the night to get stuff to the polling place. So,
and then it takes a long time afterwards to confirm all the write-ins, right? Because you have to check all the names, make sure they're spelled correctly.
Well, and you have to go through and if you have a person, one person is, this is Pete Smith, let's say, and then Peter Smith, you have to count those separately, right? So every spelling of the name has to be counted as a separate write-in entry. So stuff like that, but whatever, it's part of the work. It's part of the work. So I'm not complaining about it. It was just, it ended up being a lot longer night than we thought.
Yeah, I believe that. We had write-ins locally in Cumberland County that we intended to have. People get it. They don't get their petitions in or done in time, and then they want to get on the ballot. And, so if it's well run and organized, then it's all right. It's the random other ones. I mean, I like writing people in as much as the next person. I did write in one of my friends for clerk of courts.
Yeah.
Because I thought it would be fun.
Well, thank you. Thank you for.
Who wants to leave spaces empty?
Well, I know I think that's really the problem. I mean, we had two organized write-in campaigns, one on the Democratic side, one on the Republican side, and both of those were fine. Right. Because like you said, they're organized efforts. So you're kind of expecting this to come in. But because there's just so many blank spaces, is that you got a whole lot of individuals, one or two votes, just for the stuff that was blank. And I think it's just like you said, it's just people just don't want to leave blank spaces and think, no one's running for it. So, I totally
Yeah.
get it. Just is what it is. Usually organized. I don't mind that. Like the organized write-in ones usually are not that big of an issue because they're because you're kind of knowing there's stuff coming in, and usually the candidates do a decent job of kind of like letting people know at least outside the polls of that they're doing, so they're coming in with the correct spellings, things like that, and
Right.
that doesn't take too long.
Yeah. Our local Republicans for the last couple of years, rather than doing the petitions, because I guess they didn't want us to know that they were running, they did organized write in campaigns for their entire slate of school board and borough council,
Oh God.
which is just annoying because it's like, just do the process. I understand there are exceptions when it doesn't happen, but it's like,
Yeah.
you should just do the process. So when I got there on Tuesday, I was like, are they doing a write in campaign? Because there was no one on the ballot for Republicans for either of those. And they weren't. They didn't seem to have an organized write-in campaign this cycle. So I guess they gave up.
Yeah. Well, give up. There you go. There you
Yeah,
go.
win a couple elections in a row. It can make the other side feel like they're not going to win. So yeah,
Yeah. So why don't we start? I mean, I'm curious. I'm dying to know about the about Lenfest, right? So
yeah,
I'm just curious. Why don't we start with that? Because that sounds like a cool thing. You've mentioned this that was coming up like for a bit. We haven't been on the show for 2 weeks in part primarily because of my schedule going off the rails
yeah,
for 2 weeks. But I just like
yeah.
give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so Lenfest is an organization, it's a nonprofit that supports local journalism. I think they're maybe 10 years old. They have lots of support programs. The Lenfest Network has support programs for different journalism organizations. And, they support the Inquirer, Spotlight PA. Some of those are like projects that are very much their projects. Um, and they do this News Philanthropy Summit as an opportunity for people who fundraise for local journalism to figure out how to be better fundraisers and where to find money. So it started on Tuesday night. There was a reception at the Penn Museum, which I've never been to. Have you ever been to the Penn Museum?
No, no.
It was in the galleries. It was so cool. Like, we're like surrounded by like Asian sculptures. I literally went to the bathroom down the elevator and it opened on the middle floor that I wasn't supposed to be going to, and there's like a giant sphinx. And I was like, what is that?
There you go.
Yeah, and there was no programming that first night. It was just get to know all of the other um, people from the other news organizations. So I met people from Arizona, Hawaii. I now have friends in Hawaii. Um,
That's very helpful.
yeah, actually, they're doing a really cool thing right now. So I'm actually really excited to get to know them. So Ben, I think his last name is Nashimira. He's the VP of operations for Civil Beat. So they do politics and government and stuff like that, but they're potentially doing a project with Cal Matters. There's this thing called Digital Democracy. It's a new online tool that I'm very excited to learn
Hmm.
about and see if we can jump jump on board with. So what I when I go to these conferences, I'm always struck by two things. We have a very small budget, and many other places have way more people working for them, which is, but there's also the other side of the coin, right? Like, I met this lady Meg who she runs a little website called Delaware Currents. Shout out Meg.
Hmm.
Go check out her website.
Definitely doing
Meg
that.
does reporting on every community that touches the Delaware River.
Hmm.
And she writes about water quality and what affects the water quality of the Delaware River Valley. So it's a fascinating way to look at like, environmental issues. But she's like a solo operation,
That's what I was gonna
you
say.
know.
So this is just her like doing like a newsletter based upon like type
She
of
has
thing.
a newsletter. She does hire some freelance reporters here and there, other disparate groups of environmental reporters who got downsized, in the course of everything that's happened in the collapse of big journalism. Um,
Even medium-sized journalism.
yeah, yeah. Well, so it's really interesting because there's like some newspapers there that are 150 years old,
Wow.
right? And they're trying to figure out how to continue to be relevant and how to continue to have enough money. So like I was in a session yesterday, that had like some Oregon newspapers in it, and it was a guy from the Texas Daily News, I want to say, um, who they're for profit. So most of the old newspapers are for profit. Most of the new newspapers are nonprofit. That's like the general sense of the way that
Hmm.
the news landscape is going these days. But the thing I was in yesterday was actually about hybrid models, which is what we're trying to set up, where you're for profit with nonprofit. So it's been really interesting. So the Texas Daily News um, partnered with foundations to get grants for specific reporting areas. So,
Mm.
like their education reporting is covered by the local community foundation, and then their science reporting is covered by a science foundation. So, like, they have all these different foundations that they work with to cover different um, beats, essentially. And so, those reporters' salaries get paid through that nonprofit.
Well, so let me ask you about this. That's fascinating to me. So
Yeah.
in that case, is that kind of like a hybrid model then? So it's
Yeah.
like the newspaper itself is just a
Still for
business,
profit. Yep.
and then but all I can't. Let me tell you why this is why it's fascinating to me. It's like this is years ago, um, and I was trying to pull together a nonprofit, like a nonprofit that was based around what I was calling at the time, like citizen journalism or something like this, right?
Yeah.
And the idea, and then I could not find at that point, I didn't know who to talk to, right, about how to do this, because that was the answer to the question. You just answered a question that I had, was we kind of to say like, well, the problem with it, I don't know if you feel this way, but one of the difficulties of running a nonprofit newsroom is because you have to be so incredibly cautious when it comes to engaging in any kind of like criticism of politicians and things like this, because of it, you have to remain, say, nonpartisan or something like this. But it
Right.
seemed to me like, well, why couldn't, and I remember this is the question that I asked people, why couldn't you actually run the newspaper, but then have like foundations that were set up, whether it's through like connected to the organization or outside of that stuff, was strictly to funding independent journalists,
Yeah.
right, who would write for this stuff. So, but
Yeah.
some people are doing this.
Some people are doing that.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what makes this also fascinating, is because we're in this weird like rebirth of journalism.
Mhm.
And going to these things is where you find out what cool shit people are doing and how they're solving the problem. And no one knows what the right answer is going to be, and is there
Right.
going to be a right answer for every situation? Who knows, so there's lots of different ways around it, but that is one way that people are doing it. The other way people are doing it is through fiscal sponsorship, which is what we are looking to accomplish ourselves. um, we're just trying to find the right fiscal sponsor, but the question with that is, do you have the whole newspaper fiscally sponsored,
Mhm.
or is it just a section of your reporting? And again, it comes to that same thing. It's like, what's the special sauce to make it all work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because that's I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, so when you're coming, what's the vibe of the place? Like, is it, do people who are involved with this, like across the country and through, are they generally in like a positive kind of thing? Is there energy there, or is it just this mix of like, how the hell are we going to do this? But yes, there's also really cool stuff, but I don't know if this is sustainable kind of thing.
I would say, while tech billionaires and those giant tech corporations have not been beneficial for a lot of reasons, one of the things as these tech companies have wrestled with what they've created
Mhm.
is that they're putting a lot of money into local journalism. So the Google News Initiative, Meta was doing it. I don't think they're doing it anymore. The Knight Foundation, now the Press Forward Fund. Um, there's all this grant money right now that's been from private foundations, which is not government related, So there's a lot of grant money, which is giving people a lot of hope. And one of the things that you end up talking about is, what do the funders want to see to give us the money? And so I actually got to have a one-on-one meeting with a funder from the Wichita Foundation, just to pick her brain about like what funders look for to fund news organizations, because they're trying to pick the best bet,
Yeah.
and that's a really hard situation. So there's a lot of excitement. I would say there's generally a lot of excitement, and a lot people are super excited to share what they're doing, what's worked for them. I met someone from Public Source, which is in Pittsburgh, and we're very excited to share some information because I have some direct mail knowledge, which is here we go.
Mhm.
Postcard Queen Emily comes to the rescue. And Jenny from Public Source has some info on, how to write a Word application. So we're going to see how that goes. So it's really exciting to share all of that stuff. That being said, the final session yesterday was about contingency planning.
Yeah.
Because people are losing uh, funding that they had through federal funding, um, through major donors who are pulling back because of the stock market, and so we had a whole thing with this organization that works on strategic planning stuff, um, to talk about how you plan, like, for the different contingencies that are possible. Whether you lose funding, is it 15%, 25%, 50%? You know what I mean? And what your course of action would be.
Yeah.
So it's both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone is concerned about what's going on, but also really excited to meet the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I miss one thing you said there about, trying people looking for the best bet.
Yeah.
One of the things I found was always one of the most kind of difficult, or most, let's put it, not the most difficult, one of the clearest contrasts with kind of like funding like independent news broadly versus what we saw at the Project on the Right for so long. Because what the Project on the Right had always been was like, we're not going to go through this scrutiny of trying to find the best bet and then
Yeah.
fund that one. They're just like, we're going to
Yeah.
fund these 20,
Right.
right? And we're going to let it work out, right? And
Right.
some of them, which they don't produce, then we're going to cut them off. So it was kind of like the money was flows up front,
Yeah.
right, and then gets pulled back, and then kind of redirected to those ones that are doing the good job, which is a very different model of how you support, kind of journalism within a particular mode. And I get the funding structures are different and all that other kind of stuff, but it's a real institutional struggle then, because it's like, okay, you're both with all these other people, right, but then technically the way that it's funded, you're in competition with those very same people over the same resources, which is
So
tricky.
what it turns out that the thing that funders like the best is collaborations with other news organizations.
Well, that's a huge positive then. Well, that's
Yeah.
a good one. Okay. All right. That's a good
Yeah.
thing then.
Yeah. So that's one of the things they actually look for, and one of the things that we haven't been very good at doing, I mean, besides us and Raging Chicken, you know, I've never really thought about it that way, but it is that way.
Well, you've been empire building, so
Yeah. It's hard to collaborate and empire build at the same
Yes,
time.
exactly, right, exactly. You know, like Caesar will be
Yeah.
Caesar. No,
Yeah.
no, but I mean, but that's. I mean, it's. I would imagine that. I mean, I don't know if this has been your experiences. I remember like in when all my experiences of doing independent media runs up into this tension,
Yeah.
which is trying to build enough trust, right, between whether it's other reporters or if
Yeah.
it's other news organizations, that I'm not trying to kind of like scoop you and send you under, right?
No.
Trying to kind of like, this is something that it seems to make sense if we were working on to get together. And
Yeah.
that's just like, it's a different, it's almost like rebuilding a culture of journalism that is not about strict like dog eat dog competition. And it's more about how do we actually do the news right.
Right. Yeah. There was a fascinating session I went to yesterday morning that was about journalism as a service,
Yeah.
and kind of it was about how you measure your impact and what you want that impact to be. So in this case, the conversation was about you're serving the community. And how do you know how to serve the community if you don't know what the community wants and needs?
Right.
So you use like old school marketing tactics where you create, you know, uh, a user, like a profile of your user, and then you figure out, well, what does that user need and want? Like you find those people, you have listening events with them, you find out what they need, and then you figure out how to backfill that so that you can start reporting the things that they want to hear about, and then track it in indicators that you can measure more qualitatively while still having some kind of quantitative numbers
Mhm.
attached to it, because we get stuck in this digital space
Yeah.
and journalism space of like always trying. There's two things: there's storytelling on this side, and then over here it's like digital analytics. And how do you marry the two of those and create a language for journalism impact so that people can really understand better whether you can take credit for something happening and whether that's what the community wanted. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So that was fascinating.
That's interesting. And immediately as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about the voter guide,
Yeah.
right? Like as a service, right? Because
Yeah.
the voter guide is not like breaking news kind of. The voter
Mm-mm.
guide is simply about, we are going
Civic
to try,
information.
exactly, so that you can be educated when you're going to about these candidates before you have to go vote on them. I mean, that
Yeah.
just I can't tell you how many people I've told about that voter guide like over the past several weeks. And just this
Yeah.
morning, I had a conversation with somebody, and they're like, they said, "Can I ask you a personal question?" Right? I'm like, "Okay," but it wasn't a personal one. It was just like, feel the same kind of time. How many times we hear this story of like, for the longest time, I just thought, an older person, not old person, but someone who's not new to politics or new to being around, was saying, for so long it's just been about, you thought you just work hard, you can get by, but now I feel like I need to do something. And it's
Right.
so hard to find out information. It's so
Right.
to know who to get in touch with, right? So I'm telling him that, and then bringing up too is like, and then trying to figure out these candidates. Like, well, do you know about the Bucks County Beacon? And so, but seriously, is like having those. I mean, how many times having that conversation? We're at the polls, just among our poll workers, we were talking about how difficult it was, and we were telling our own stories about, being in the area trying to figure out who does what and what this person is running for and what they actually stand for, beyond just like,
Mhm.
Percy is a great place to live. What's the other candidate say? Percy is a great place to live, right? I mean,
Right.
it's like, what do
I
you want?
know.
Fiscal responsibility and community. What do you want?
Right.
Fiscal responsibility and community, right? I mean, it's like,
No new taxes. Yeah.
right, right. I mean, and it's really hard, I think, to, we've talked about this in the show before, but that seems to be such a good example of like really like a news outlet, the Bucks County Beacon, with its eye on that kind of service. So
Yeah, I mean that's ultimately the direction that I want to take the Beacon is into a civic information space. We want to create and elevate informed voters. Um, and that was one of the conversations at the News Philanthropy Summit that I was just at was what works in messaging for
mhm.
newspapers these days because even the word news is
Yep.
now has bad connotations. And you know what else has bad connotations now, shockingly? Saving democracy. This is what they tell me. So the answer now is the thing that I have been trying to push towards, which is why the voter guide is so important. Is civic information. People want information. They don't want news. They want information. They want to be informed. So yeah, that's the push, and that's why I created the voter guide. I'll tell you, I told more than a couple people about my voter guide when I was at this summit,
I bet.
and they said, "How many candidates?"
And you're like, how many people did you have working on this?
Right,
And you're like, well, we had this many people and this many
right,
candidates.
right. I was like, "Yeah, 379 candidates," and they're like, "So, like, did you have a big team?" I was like, "I had two freelancers work on it, and then I worked on it for a week and a half, 2 weeks myself." I was like, "Yeah, kind of a big undertaking." Yeah, so a note on the voter guide, it will be updated in the next week or so with who won and who lost. Uh, I'll be eliminating candidates out of it, so it'll be pared down to what the general is going to be.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, this is good. I mean, that's fascinating to me. I mean, I think this is. I mean, I'm glad to hear that those conversations, that there is some positive outlook going on there, because it seems like there's a lot of energy, but the question is always how do you marry the energy with sustainability and kind of growth in those areas. So
It is. It is. There's always a lot to talk about, and there's never enough time, and there's too many classes, and you're like, and then you start swimming with ideas, and then you come back and you're like, oh God, but I have to go back to work now. So
right. No, that's exactly it. You said like, okay, well, guess what? I ran out, like literally there's not enough hours in the days to do these particular things without either more people, which means you need to fund those people, right? You need to have all this stuff, or to kind of have some magic extension of the day, which is not going to happen.
yeah,
But I think about this, and I mean, again, we haven't been here for a couple of weeks, and like I was thinking about like, oh, look at all that's happened in the past 2 weeks, and that is true. Like a ton has happened in the past couple of weeks, but I mean, even thinking about like what we just see the past couple of days, just like you get this Trump's like big beautiful bill,
yeah,
and I'm thinking about, again, I'm thinking about conversations that I've had over the past several days with people about just saying like, where the focus is going to have to be is going to have to be on where the impacts are happening down the street from us. I mean,
yeah,
like where, because I look at what's going to happen here with these cuts of the Medicaid cuts, what's going to happen with these the SNAP benefits cuts, what's going to happen with it when we have, at the same time we have an increase in homelessness, that we have a decrease in kind of the opportunities for people to kind of find homes, right? To get support
yeah,
to make sure they have homes. That on top of, again, throwing those two things about the hurricane stuff is like, climate change is not going away just because our federal government is not paying attention to it anymore. And
right,
like infrastructure impacts. And I'm thinking about, we had this, like, this is a small thing. We had, just the amount of rain that we've had over the past several days
yeah,
is like what that does at a local level to kind of infrastructure. I mean, you were talking about this too, like out by your way about those things, and making all of this stuff meaningful is seems to be absolutely critical.
Yeah.
The conversation I had with someone this morning, I was just saying, it's like, yeah, because I think the big challenge is like all this stuff at the top level that we're taught in our national politics. Like you get these people say this and these people say this, right? Which one are you going to choose, right? I said, well, maybe we need to have a different kind of conversation. Maybe the different conversation are what are the problems of your community and how do we solve it? Right.
Right.
And how, and what's the future that we want to be part of creating, right? What is it that we want
Yeah.
for those kind of questions, which are, they don't start from this partisan like stuff we see at a national. They start with real concrete material problems in our communities and our
Uh,
visions of the future.
I think that that's true. And then you can kind of reverse engineer it to figure out what's happening at the federal level.
Exactly.
Because if you're in a local municipal government and you see the problems that you have with infrastructure, not enough funding, environmental problems, then you go, well, where can we get money to support this? And then you look at the state level and you look at the federal level. And then you see who supports those things that would support your community.
Right. I
That
mean, and you
that
think, and I think, I was having again this conversation a couple of weeks ago, but about just the way of the mode of thinking about stuff. And so they're again, so well, question, I don't know if I want the government doing this stuff. I said, okay, let's say this. We have like Blooming Glen contractors is like, they do a lot of like road work around in the area, right? They're just local
Yeah.
contractor. They do big jobs and things like that. As far as I can tell, they do an awesome job, right? I've seen what they've done and they do quick, good work. But so, okay, so go to them and tell them about your infrastructure problem and say, hey, Blooming Glen, we need you to fix this. And what do you think they're
Right.
going to say? Right?
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to say, like, oh, okay, that's a great idea. Let's get right on that.
Right.
No, because they're not there to solve community problems. They're there to make money doing the contracting work.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
it's not like, it's like the backwards way of thinking about, right, the thing. It's like, no, business is not going to solve the problem for us. Right.
No.
It's like it's
No, because they don't have to worry about the public good.
no,
That's the
no.
whole point. Like, you have to start with the organizations that care about the public good. And the answer is municipal government first,
Yes.
state government second, federal government third, you know? But those things don't exist without the others.
Right. And it's almost getting people to kind of like start from that point and say, okay, you
Yeah.
want business to solve this problem. Okay, who's going to solve the problem of like homelessness? Let's start there. Right. Which
Right.
business is going to kind of like address that? Well, and you very quickly they hit the wall, right? Because
Right.
like, well, the real estate companies. I'm like, oh, really? How are they going to make money off homeless people?
God.
Right. I mean, it's almost like it's like a way of doing. I started this. I did this project once in one of my classes where they had to take a really big issue, and we started with like climate change, right? And I said, well, there's a couple ways of different kind of starting that. Is like one, you could start from the science of climate and carbon and all this other kind of stuff, and what kind of global emissions have to be brought down, or you can start from like, okay, here we are at Kutztown University. This place uses energy, right? What are the
Right.
things that we could do here, right, that would have an impact upon that issue? Like, and then you're in a problem solving mode as opposed to like despair, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Despair isn't super helpful.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at
Yeah.
all. So I'm really, so there's lots of stuff going on at the national level, and then I do want to put a big plug for the kind of No Kings protests that are coming up on June 14th. I mean, I think that that is those are going to be important. I think you go to nokings.com, nokings.com, and it is in the very spirit of the hands off protest that we saw kind of not too long ago, right? Last month or 2 months ago, where people getting together, beginning to kind of find each other, begin solving problems, building power, building organization in their community where these where these are where the issues are hitting the road.
Yeah.
And it does seem to be like one of the surest antidotes to cynicism right now is that kind of local involvement.
Yeah. Yeah. Being part of the community. Um, is really important, instead of just complaining. I
Yeah. Now
mean,
complaining is okay. The question is like do it with other people
right.
so that you can solve it.
With positive action.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Here's the
Right.
problem. This is so frustrating. What can we do to mitigate that? And it's funny because like sometimes mitigating, I was again, I keep going back to these conversations that I just recently had, but that 5 calls app,
Mm-hmm.
that thing, right? So just like 5 calls, you can sit there, you make 5 calls to your representatives, right? Based upon issues, it gives you some like helpful scripts that you could actually use to contact folks, or you can just kind of tell them what you're doing. But it just takes away one of the barriers that people have in order to call stuff. And I was saying to somebody that, well, you could do like a cool thing like 5 calls Friday, where you just don't do it alone. You could meet with people in a
Right.
place, right?
Yeah.
And do it together, right?
Right.
So you're actually having conversations and you're an acting community at the same time. So you're still getting the thing accomplished, but you're not an isolated individual anymore. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
little
It's
things like that.
amazing. It's amazing what building community, looks like, how it changes the dynamic. I mean, there's so much divisiveness over stuff. Like, the things I read online, I'm just like, this guy's my neighbor. Why does
Yeah.
he hate trans people and why does he hate Muslims? You know?
Hmm.
And then I go to a cultural heritage fair last night, and there's like a bunch of Muslims from different countries that live in our town that are awesome and making delicious food for us to all share. And it's like, ugh.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
But when you can come together and share a space with, people of the same interest or varied interest, it always I think works out well, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. 100%. Well, I think we got a couple, really good things, recent articles in the Beacon that are leading directly to more organizing, right? Feeding directly into the organizing. And the number one, this great piece by Cyril Michaleko, right, the editor in chief of the Beacon, on this big beautiful bill, and the fact that Brian Fitzpatrick, the so-called say moderate from Bucks County, right, self-proclaimed PR machine-driven moderate from Bucks County,
Yeah.
was the vote, right?
Yeah.
And you was the vote,
Could
like his.
have been the vote.
Yep. Yep. And so here you go. This is the guy who claims to be the moderate, voted for a bill that is going to cut nearly $1 trillion in Medicaid and SNAP benefits.
But don't
Right.
worry. Don't worry. He's going to work with the Senate Republicans to fix it.
Yeah. Whatever.
It's
Whatever.
like, bro, you're in the House of Representatives.
Yeah. You're in the. Exactly. What are you going to do? It's like you're going to work with
Wrong
the.
answer.
It's like you could have fixed it.
He's like, no. I'm gonna go up the chain and I'm gonna work in the Senate on it. It's
Yeah.
like, bro, wrong building.
Right. Exactly. It's like, what are you going to do? I mean, like, seriously, it's the most bizarre. I mean, but it's, again, this is what happens when like people are just like in a team sport mentality and are willing to just to kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, well, okay, that he gave us enough where we can kind of like gloss over the fact that the representative from like Pennsylvania's first district, Brian Fitzpatrick, just voted to gut Medicaid and SNAP benefits.
Yeah.
Right? That is going to materially impact people in Bucks County and across the nation. That is going to
Yeah.
make people go hungry, right? That is going to make people be denied medical care that is absolutely necessary.
Yeah. Did you see Governor Shapiro's email? Do you
No,
get
I did
Governor
not.
Shapiro's emails? He sent an email with what it is going to cost Pennsylvania. He sent it this morning. Hold on. Let me just type Governor Shapiro into my email.
Hey, Google.
Say Governor funny. Shapiro. No, it was like a whole breakdown of how the costs are not going. We can't make it up in Pennsylvania. Like, we losing the federal funding that big beautiful bill is talking about. We can't make it up, and he had specific facts and figures about, how many families are going to lose their access to food and access to medical care.
Yep.
Like, because we can't make it up.
There's no way.
Yeah.
And state politics, state budgeting is different than federal budgeting.
Yeah.
Right. State, and just by law and by the actual checkbook, state, because Pennsylvania does not issue its own currency. Let's just put it like that. So thus and therefore, the money you raise is the money you spend, which is different when the federal government. So there it is, people. Okay, so you don't want your Medicaid benefits cut, right? Or you don't want other people's Medicaid benefits cut. You don't want kids to go hungry. Well, guess what? There's only a couple ways to make that happen, right? And one is that the federal government is going to supplement this stuff, or we're going to raise taxes in this state in order to kind of make up what's left. And as well as I do, that is not going to happen.
There's one answer, Kevin. Legalize it.
Legalize it. Don't criticize it. Really? Seriously? 100%, right?
Yeah. I believe it's going to happen in the next year or so, especially if we're losing federal funding for things like that. Will make up the difference. Billions of dollars.
Let's do it. I'm on board. Whatever. Well, let's do it. Stoner Nation, man. Yes. Let's do it.
Stoner PA.
Stoner PA. We could call it what? Wait, Stoner Pa? Stoner? Oh, I'll work on that. Yeah. It's got to be a nice little catchy little phrase.
T-shirts now.
T-shirt now. We could change the whole like billboards to like PA state of being, and you just have like smoke coming up from the side of the Keystone.
Now you really have a friend in Pennsylvania. Right.
You have lots of friends in Pennsylvania.
They're also friendly.
Yeah. Oh my God. Everyone's friendly. Oh my God. That's where we're headed. Yeah. But that's like, these are real things, real going to be impacting, like, that article from Cyril was exactly what we were talking about earlier, right?
Wait, what? Angie from TikTok said Keystone State.
Keystone! There it is! There Angie. It is! The winner! There goes another winner! The Keystone State. That's definitely going on a t-shirt. Oh my God.
Perfect.
Oh God. Yes. I love it. I love it.
Oh my gosh, I'm making that t-shirt. Like,
that's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah. Keystone State. That's great. But that's a perfect example of when you have Cyril's piece, and you want to, okay, here's what this is up there. Boom, let's get down into what this impact is going to be kind of in Pennsylvania. And one of the key things that I say, this is, why this resource becomes so important, is because not only in that piece, we talk about those impacts, but you're kind of part of the people, some of the people who are being interviewed in there are part of the people that are on the ground that are fighting for this stuff. So us in the community, right, kind of see this, okay, now we have points of connection where we can kind of reach out and look for how do we get involved with these things. That's really, really important. The same goes for what we're seeing with, the Sheriff Fred Herons seeking out to kind of join ICE, right? So you have all the little mini-me's kind of running around here, wreaking terror on kind of potential immigrant, kind of potential undocumented people, right? The stop and frisk comes to Pennsylvania, right? Deport people without I was just reading. You read that story about the Danish guy, right? So there's this Danish. I forget where he was. I want to say Michigan, but I don't know if that was Michigan. But Danish guy, right? He's married to an American. They have a couple kids, right? Went to straighten out a paperwork error, right? There was a miscommunication apparently upon what these formal filing of papers were. Now he's been detained for over a month in a Louisiana prison now, right? But he was arrested, right, because of this kind of this paperwork clerical error. When he's married to an American and has got 2 American kids, right? And this is a white Danish dude.
Right. Yeah.
So
from Northern Europe.
Right, exactly. Get much more whiter than that, right? Seriously.
I'm pretty sure that's what Trump's looking for.
Well, that's exactly. And I just think there's just these stories after stories of every single day of this stuff going on, and that the sheriff of Bucks County, our taxpayer dollars, right? Direct county taxes go to this dude so he can go and harass members of our community. I mean, that's absolutely insane.
Well, and beyond that, like, those officers have other things to do.
Totally.
Like, protect public safety, not from people who live there. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Although
commit some crimes first.
Right. The number of people from his office that jumped at the opportunity to sign up for that task force was astounding to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
He had more people volunteer to take part of going around and doing that than they had positions to fund.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if they got accepted to this task force. I mean, I'm sorry, but that is the last thing that I want kind of like my police
taxpayer dollars
exactly
for.
Right. And that's to say, like, I'm not saying that, okay, if there's an issue, there's a crime that's happening. I'm not saying that. I'm saying to go out and proactively harass people.
Yeah.
Right. And send them.
Frisk already didn't work before.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Like, it's already constitutionally invalid.
Totally.
It's really disappointing. There's so many reasons why it's bad. So, I don't know. I was talking to a lady in Philly when I was there the other day. We were staying at the inn at Penn, so we were right at UPenn.
Mm-hmm.
And this lady I was talking to was actually there for her grandkids that were at CHOP, Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. And she was like talking about the Penn campus, and she's like, you walk through the campus because that's like your way to get somewhere. And she's like, and it's all foreigners. And I looked at her and I go, hold up a second. I was like, and I knew this lady was from Florida. I already knew what I was getting myself into, and I was trying to be real cool. But I was like, they're not all foreigners. Just because their skin is brown does not make them a foreigner, just so you know. She's like, yes, you're right. That was the wrong thing to say. That was very racist. She's like, that's not what I mean. She's like, and they're all super smart. And I was like, obviously, because they're at Penn.
Right. Yeah, let's keep on going away from the essentialism, shall we? Let's bring it back. Yes, because they're at Penn, not because like some sort of in their genetic coding they've got the smart gene, right? Oh my god. God.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, so you don't want people like that just running out and being like, oh, saw a brown person, let's just check on them, make sure they're actually from here.
No, exactly. And just that, I mean, that one anecdote is like, we could repeat that over and over and over again with folks, right? Especially if that's let's even say people who don't overtly want to be racist, don't overtly want to, if that's where they go at first, it tells you where their brain is set. Because of our media environment, because of the way this stuff is articulated, because of the long histories of this crap in this country. And so looking at folks and the first thing, foreigner.
Right.
Yeah. And again, doesn't even mean, we don't even have to say it's a knock against that person. We're saying, like, they weren't thinking right away. Let's give them credit. We'll say they weren't, wasn't something, give them all the grace in the world that was, okay, yes, I recognize it's not what I want. But the fact that they go there first tells us a little bit about how this system is going to operate.
Right? Yes. Right. Because the police officers who are getting whatever the like shortened version of ICE training is to do this, they're still just people.
Exactly.
They still all come with their own biases, and like, I mean, ICE has its place, right? Like, I get that, but those people are trained.
Immigration enforcement. I would say the immigration, like ICE, comes out of the Homeland Security, comes out of 9/11. It was created at that particular point. I don't like the militarized immigration
I don't like
status.
It
That's
either.
my point.
I don't like it either. But there is some amount of like, I don't know, you know,
immigration and customs enforcement, right? I mean,
yeah,
I get that, like the acronym kind of make every
yeah.
nation has got to have those kind of things that take place.
Someone has to manage people moving to our country,
That's
right? Like,
100%.
yes,
Right.
yes.
And the vast
But they get
majority,
trained for that.
right. And but the vast majority of that, right? I mean, this is
Hmm.
I mean, how long? I can remember back with, I mean, look, George W. Bush, right? George W. Bush was the last president I remember that actively was trying to get a comprehensive immigration bill passed. Right. And again, it was probably, if they ever got to it, it was probably not going to be the bill that I would have appreciated. Right. Of
Right.
like 100%. Right. However,
Yeah.
right, that is precisely the kind of the issue. Right. The issue has always been like, okay, look, if we're going to have lots of immigration to this country, we have to be able to think about how this is going to happen and where there's going to be one, pathways to citizenship, people who are already here, and then how do you kind of normalize things at the border. Instead,
Right.
we went the militarization route, where we're just
Right.
going to militarize the whole thing and cause and make everybody a criminal in people's mind, even though it's a civic, like a civil like, infraction, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. No,
anyways,
I agree. I agree. I
no, it's
agree.
it's
And
so frustrating, and it's like it's I can't, it's
but it's
we've
like
done
the
this.
militarization of police forces in
That's
general.
exactly what I was going to say. It's like one thing after another. Like I can remember growing up in Utica, New York, where we had a kind of a big state hospital kind of downtown, right, during the Reagan administration. And one of the first things that the Reagan administration did is cut all funding, right, to mental health, state mental health hospitals from federal government. So what did
Right.
that mean? It meant that all those folks would
Crime
have
and
no
homelessness.
place to
That's what
live,
it
right?
meant.
Totally, right?
Yeah.
And they had no place to live. You have an increase in homelessness and an increase in crime, right? Because people without having a space to get managed for the mental disabilities and kind of all sorts of issues are going to kind of like be erratic as it goes out in the world. And so what
Yeah.
do? They handed it over to the police, right?
Right.
And I remember this is in Utica, New York. I remember the police at the time saying, we are not trained, nor are we, do we have the capabilities to actually handle this,
Right.
right? So they end up waiting until, instead of treating people, we wait until they do something wrong and then we throw them in prison, right? I mean,
Which are now privatized.
which are now privatized,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And then
But
they don't want to shut them down or empty out the prisons because corporations are making money.
money, money,
Yeah.
money. Yep, exactly.
It's it all goes together, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm awake now.
Yeah.
I'm awake now. Well, anything else that you kind of got on the burners, or kind of the directions of things that are kind of coming up, or that you want to kind of float out there before we close for the day?
Well, we have your illustrious student CJ joining us next week.
She is awesome. I will
Welcome.
say this publicly. I am so excited that CJ is going to be working with y'all. She's just amazing. I will kind of like, whatever, shout her praises, I guess is the word. Shout her
Yep.
praises all. So I'm hoping it works out really well. I'm really happy she's going to be joining y'all.
Yep, I'm very excited. We're kicking off our work together on Tuesday, so we're very
Nice.
excited. CJ is an intern, and we hope it goes well. She's going to help out with some social media and some website design and stuff like that. So that's going to be really exciting. Um, Other news, we are trying to start a business directory of like mission aligned businesses in Bucks County. We have a button on our website to go there to fill out the form to become one of those businesses on the directory. Your first month is free to be listed. After that, it's going to be $50 a month to stay on the list. So we are hoping to build a, a big, beautiful list. Yes. So we're pretty excited about that. Um, I just applied for a big grant to expand the beacon, and I just found out there was not that many applicants.
Fingers
So
crossed.
everyone cross your fingers for us
Yes.
because it's $150,000 grant. Yeah, we want it. We want it. And It's called the GNI Growth Catalyst Grant or program. So it's literally for people like us that are trying to expand
That's
and have
awesome.
proven that we can do it in one market and expand into another geographic market. And you get like training for a year from like a business coach. Yeah, so fingers crossed, man.
Fingers crossed. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, I'm hoping to raise some money for the Beacon. If anyone wants to give us money, let me know. We have buttons on our website. Kevin, tell
Support the
them what the
beacon
button
button.
is.
Support the beacon button. Support the beacon button at buckscountybeacon.com.
Yeah.
I literally practiced that.
Yeah. You just made my little rap video that I'm going to have CJ make next week.
Support the beacon button. Support the beacon button. Support the beacon button.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to run a little quick fund drive before summer really starts kicking in. And we're updating our voter guide to show you who won and who lost. And who's going to face each other in the general. So over the next couple weeks, we will try to get through that list. And then it'll be ready for the general. So you guys can spend all summer telling me what's missing.
There you go.
I'd love to know.
Yeah,
All you
and maybe
candidates out there.
yeah,
Send us an
exactly.
email.
Those people that decided not to respond before, we're going to make it difficult to
Yeah.
do this. Guess what? You have a place, like
Yeah.
we've got lots of time to go say, hey, this is different, or hey, you might want to include this too as well. Well,
Yeah.
right to
I will
buckscountybeacon.com.
say that the page got over 2,000 views in the last
That's awesome.
2 weeks or whatever.
That sounds really that feels really good to hear is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It feels really good for me to hear too. So.
I bet. That's
nice
fantastic.
to say it out loud. Yep.
Well, and that speaks volumes of, I would suspect about where things are going to go in the fall. Voter turnout. You got to talk about 2,000 views when voter turnout was this low.
Yeah.
When I don't think it's going to be exactly that in the fall. I think we're going to see kind of definitely an uptick when they're really contested elections. So we shall see. We shall see. This is going to be awesome. I'm really excited about it. So
yeah, I am too.
Cool.
I am too.
Well, I'm looking out my window from my basement, so I have to look up like that to see out it. But and there's actually little see rays of sunshine coming through. But there are dark clouds on the horizon. I'm not speaking metaphorically here. I'm speaking actually like literally. So hopefully we get a little break in some of this weather that's been rolling through for the weekend. Get my hands in the dirt again.
Yeah.
But other than that.
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm excited I think it's going to be beautiful weather this weekend.
Yeah, not too hot. It's going to be
not
cool.
hot.
Nope.
No one's getting in the pool, but
right. Well, I'm going tonight. I'm actually going to see Carsey Blanton. Do you know Carsey Blanton? She's awesome, kind of like political, like folky kind of singer. We're going to see her down in Philadelphia at the World Cafe Live. So I'm very, very excited about it. I've been following. I started following her during COVID. Love her work. It's got a great song. It goes, "Rich people stacking the deck, rich people with big fat checks." So check her out. If you don't know Carsey Blanton, check out Carsey Blanton. She's awesome. Support her work, and but I'll be down there. We'll be down there seeing her tonight, which is something I'm looking forward to.
Awesome.
Right? And then my daughter gets to march in the Memorial Day parade tomorrow.
My daughter is marching in the Memorial Day parade on Monday, and so am I.
Yep.
So am I. I
Nice.
get to sit in a ceremonial seats when we have our Memorial Day ceremony.
You gonna do this?
I hand out candy. I have to go buy candy. And a funny story before, I know we got to wrap up, but our town has a couple parades a year, Halloween and Memorial Day. That's it, right? And the throwing of candy and the kids lining the streets has gotten a little out of hand. And the kids creep in further and further onto the street to get the candy. And then there's like, fire trucks and whatever, like coming down the street. So after the Halloween parade, there was a whole conversation between the public safety committee and the police department and like everyone. And it was decided candy will not be thrown from vehicles and we're not allowed to throw candy. So we have to walk over to the side of the road and hand kids candy. So it's going to be, I'm excited.
Wait, so you're not allowed to throw the candy? You actually have to hand it to people.
Yes. Because when the candy gets thrown, it gets put in the wrong spot. Some of it ends up in the wrong spot, and then the kids go run out in the middle of the street. So, like, yeah.
I was imagining a situation where you have buckets of candy, you're throwing it kind of back, so they would be going to get the candy away from the street. But no, you actually.
That's not how it works, though. Like, it's not a huge street, and like the sidewalks that line it, kids sit like on the verge or on the curb, and they get up from the curb and they start running, and they're small, and it's a whole thing. So I'm interested to see how it goes. But
I was going to say, may that work out well.
So, yeah, well, fingers crossed. And because the floats in the parade can't throw candy, I feel like I have to get 10 pounds of candy. Like I'm going to have to wear a backpack. Because I have to give out. I always run out of candy too. So it's big important things this weekend.
There you go.
That's on Monday.
Excellent. Well, there it is. Well, happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. Take your time. For those of you who know folks, have people in their family who lost people in kind of like in the service and kind of battles and stuff like that. I hope there's that time to kind of remember and kind of give honor to those folks that lost their lives in this. And I also hope this is an opportunity for people to take some time to be out there with other folks in their community, to be together and have some kind of together positive time. Yeah, some positive together time out there. If you're going to be out there for the weekend. But well, thank goodness that my head is kind of like back on somewhat straight at this point. Looking forward to some really cool stuff over the summer. But Emily, I wish you an awesome weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Yep.
All right.
Happy Memorial Day, everyone.
All right. Happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. We are out of here. Yet another week, another day in this world. Here we go. Go do it, everybody. You know what to do.